wasn't the church who did it, but the church used the sword of the state in order to accomplish its purpose. You see, the constitutional fathers not only knew the history of Europe when church and state are joined together, they also knew the history of the colonial period in the United States. You know, there are many people who misunderstand or don't understand the colonial period. Do you know that during the colonial period, which begins at around 1620, when the Pilgrims arrived in the United States, atheist Jews, Quakers, and Baptists were deprived of their religious rights because they did not agree with the established church of the colonies, which was the Puritans, or was the Anglican Church. Did you know that there were Sunday laws in the colonies, and if you didn't go to church on Sunday, you could be whipped, you could be fined, you could be jailed, and in the case of 3 colonies, you could be executed for not coming to church on Sunday? Did you know that they actually cut off the ears of Quakers for coming back when they had been exiled from the colonies? If they came back once, they cut off one ear. If they came back the second time, they cut off the second ear. And if they caught them the third time, they executed them for their religious convictions. Did you know that only people who professed to be loyal to the established church could occupy positions in the civil government? And also, the government paid the salaries of the ministers, interestingly enough. And so the church and the state were joined together, and as a result, you had persecution. You know, many people know the story, for example, of Roger Williams. Roger Williams arrived in the colonies in 1629. He pastored a church there, but he started teaching separation of church and state. He said there are to be 2 kingdoms in this country. Absolutely, but they're supposed to be separate, one from another, because that's what Jesus taught. Are you seeing what the 2 horns are? Jesus said 2 kingdoms in the same nation, separate one from another. And of course, what he was teaching went over like a lead balloon. And so they banished him from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And he himself says that in the towards the end of 1635 and the beginning of 1636, he had to flee for 3 weeks through huge snowdrifts to get out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony because he had been banished. And if they found him in there, they could throw him in prison or they could even execute him. And so he ended up in Rhode Island, and he established the capital of Rhode Island, which is Providence. That's interesting that he would call that city Providence. And so the founding fathers knew the history of what happens when church and state are united together in Europe. They knew what happened when church and state are joined together in the United States, in the colonial period. They also knew their Bibles. In several places, they wrote about how they knew that because the Jews allied themselves with the Roman state, that led to the death of Jesus Christ. They knew 3 things. They knew the history of Europe in the Middle Ages, they knew the colonial period, and they knew their Bibles. And they knew that when these 2 kingdoms become one, automatically there is persecution. And so the constitutional fathers, knowing this, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and the Constitution was ratified in 1787, and the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, was ratified in 1791, they said, we're going to have a different system of government in this nation that we're establishing.